You know what one of the most exciting times is for anybody who takes on a DIY project? I'm going to let you know what that is right now. Welcome back to the show. And I really hope you've been following along for the last couple episodes. I know it's been a little bit wordy, but it's been very hard for me to actually film something and do the work that I'm doing. So I apologize for that in advance, but I'm going to show you what's going on today. We're going to jump into that real quick here, but basically two things have happened today, and they are a monumental moment for anybody who does DIY work. It's the moment where you go from destruction to construction. It's the moment where you stop tearing things out and you start putting things in. It's the moment where you start making the room your own. And that's what today is. I finally got everything out. I got all of that floor out. I got all the walls out. I got all the fixtures, appliances, everything out. And now I can start putting everything back together again. So the two things that I did today on today's episode is, number one, I got the walls patched, so they're just about ready to paint. And then number two, I got the subfloor in. And that is the first steps to starting to getting this bathroom finally finished. So let's jump into the episode right now and I'll show you exactly what I got done today. All right, so welcome back. And what we have done today is basically I have all of the walls patched 2 coats and sanded once. I have to go over and do another final sanding before I start putting on the primer on all those patch spots. I have all of the new valves installed, which I made a mistake because my wife wants to put a faux brick wall on here and I won't be able to fit the faux brick panel over that valve. So I'm going to have to do a little bit of creative cutting on the panel in order to get that brick wall to go around that valve, but that's all right. I can work on that at a later time. I also had a new subfloor put in. I followed code standards for every 8 inches on the screws in the center, and then every 2 to 3 inches along the edges, especially 2 to 3 inches where the pieces of subfloor meet, as you can see right there. So everything is screwed down solidly. I did not glue this subfloor in the event I ever have to change it in the future. I'm trying to think of future projects as well. And if this floor does end up getting wet from being in a bathroom, I want to be able to unscrew this and get it up. The floor underneath the original subfloor that you saw before was actually glued down to another vinyl floor, and that certainly was going to be a bear to get up, so I just decided to go over it with 1/8 inch plywood. I left a 1/8 inch expansion gap in between each of the pieces in the event the wood expands or contracts over time. That'll give me an 1/8 of an inch play, and I also left a little gap along the edge here, which is necessary whenever you put wood in an environment that changes humidity over time. So that will give me the ability, or give the wood the ability to expand and contract as needed depending on the environment, and then it won't cause the floor to buckle and get wavy. So the subfloor is in. That is my update. I have everything cut to spec here, so it ends right at the carpet line. Please ignore that horrible carpet spot. That's our cat who likes to drink his water and then scratch on the floor and tear up the carpet. We're going to be replacing that carpet very soon anyway. But I might actually extend the vinyl plank flooring out into this landing here and just keep carpeting in the bedrooms. So the process for the subfloor is now complete, and it's ready for our new flooring, which is on order and should be here in a few days. In the meantime, what we're going to do is do the final sanding on these walls. And once these walls are final sanded in a few minutes, I'm going to prime all these spots here. All of these will be primed. As a matter of fact, I'll probably end up priming most of the wall because there's just so many spots. And I want to make sure that the ceiling as well as the walls are as waterproof as possible for that steam and humidity that inevitably builds up in a bathroom. So this room will be primed out now. And then I left this hole open here in the event the corner is not exactly 90 degrees. When I go to put the sink back, that'll be a little bit of an indent spot. I patched a majority of it, but in the event I need to scooch that sink into the corner a little bit, that's available. The only other thing I could do is fill that in with a piece of drywall, which I have a little bit of spare drywall in the cubby hole here that I could probably cut an L-shaped piece out of for that spot if need be. But I have a feeling when I put the sink back in, it's going to nudge back into that corner the same way it was before. Since we're not changing that sink right now, I'm just going to leave it as is and hope that it will fit into that little L-shaped wedge again. I patched the rest of it. I don't plan on sinking the sink that far into the wall the way that the last person did, but it may need just a little bit of wiggle and playroom in that back corner if this corner is not exactly 90 degrees. So that's left as is for now. If I need to fix it later, I can always do that. I can put that piece of drywall in, throw some patch over it, let it dry, sand it down, and then put white paint over it. Because these walls are going to be white. My wife wants a white room with the color on the cabinets, so they're going to be periwinkle, I believe is the color she's going for. It's not exactly periwinkle, but it's extremely close. And that will be the vanity right here. And then we have the new toilet to go in. But those two items are not going to be put in until after I put the flooring down, because in the event we want to change the vanity, which I'd like to eventually, this vanity is probably going to have to be replaced because of the size of it. And it's also a very cheap vanity. But if we end up changing that vanity, I want to have the ability to change it out and not have to worry about our vinyl plank flooring. So that's our update for today. I'm going to get working on sanding the walls and priming them and wait for this floor to come in, and I will update you as things progress. Have a great day, and if you guys are working on a project like this, I wish you all the best of luck. Welcome back. You know, like I said before, it really was a fun day today, actually doing something productive instead of something destructive. You know, that's I tell you, that's really a great feeling. So anyway, as you can see from the video, I had two major things happen today. I got those walls patched for pretty much the final time. There's a few small spots I still got to hit, but for the most part, the walls have the patch applied, and I'm going to do a little final sanding and just make sure everything is perfectly smooth. I'm going to go into more detail on the actual joint compound application and sanding procedure in a future video, because it's just too much to talk about when I'm going through an entire renovation project, and I know you guys have better things to do than to just hear me ramble on when you want to hear more about what's going on in the bathroom. So I'm going to be doing a video on that shortly in the future. When I go to the next room in the next project, I'm going to take time and actually do, you know, just the sanding tutorial or just the joint application tutorial. So anyway, that's all done, and now I've got the new subfloor put in. And what I wanted to talk about today was more the subfloor aspect of what today's accomplishment was. So anyway, cilantro on that. The subfloor is 1/8 inch plywood, okay? And there's a couple things I want to go over with you before I let you go today. I know you've already watched the video in bathroom, you know, so number one is the thickness of your floor currently, All right, give that consideration. You're going to have to be putting in a threshold in between the old floor in the other room and then the new floor in the new room. And if it's already built up, you have to consider you're putting in another subfloor, and you have to consider you're putting in your finished tile work or whatever on top of that. So keep that in mind. We have the actual home's flooring that was installed when the house was put in, which is generally a 5/8 sheet of plywood that's put down over your ceiling or floor joist. Second item would have been the vinyl linoleum flooring that came with the house when the house was sold. I'm guessing they put in that linoleum when the house was built. I saw it underneath the old subfloor when I tried to pry out just a little bit. It was glued down with construction adhesive, so it wasn't coming up. That's why I didn't tear it out. But the few little pieces I was able to get off, I could actually see linoleum down there. So there's probably about a 5/8 inch sheet of plywood. Then you got your 1/8 inch or so of linoleum. And then the last owners, they put in another 1/8 inch sheet of plywood on which they applied mortar, and then they put ceramic tile. Now, I pulled out all that ceramic tile, as I showed you in a previous video. If you haven't seen that, and gone back and take a look at the mess I made there. I ground off all that mortar and got it right down to that wood. And so basically what I was contending with was the 5/8 of the original floor, 1/8 inch or so of the linoleum, and then another 1/8 inch of the subfloor they put in. So it really wasn't that much higher than the original floor, but it is still at least an 1/8 inch higher because it has the old subfloor in it. So now I'm going to apply another 1/8 inch subfloor over the top of that to give it a nice smooth coating. Well, that's all well and good, but that 1/8 and that 1/8 now becomes a 1/4. And now you've got to step up from whatever room you're leaving and going into this room. And then I've got to be putting my tile on top of that, my vinyl plank flooring. So when you consider all that, I'm going to have a step, probably close to a 1/4 inch up into the room. I've got to consider that on the threshold. So when you're redoing your floor, make sure you consider the thickness of what your finished product is going to be, and make sure that's going to be doable for you, and whether or not you should do that or actually go through the time, expense, and labor and everything else just to tear all that other stuff out. There's also one thing too that you need to keep in mind if you're doing a subfloor in a bathroom. You have to consider the height of your toilet flange. If your toilet flange is lower than your floor level, you're going to be prone to leaks. So when you're putting in a new subfloor, putting in your new vinyl plank or ceramic tile or whatever it is that you're doing, make sure that you consider your toilet flange in your project and get yourself a spacer if you need to, which I can do a video on that in the future if need be. But that's something that you want to consider as well if you're putting in a floor. Okay, be mindful of that toilet flange. Number 2, you want to make sure that your floor is relatively level. Okay, so if your floor is not level, if you know it's not level, you can use any sort of a floor leveling product, which is like a very liquid cement type material that basically finds its own level on your floor. The only issue that I would think about with that, I don't have to use it, but would be if it's very thick in one area, you might have a hard time getting a screw through it. But that's something to think about if your floor is not level. Number 3, you want to also consider the type of wood that you're using. So in our case, we're using an 1/8 inch sheet of just contractor grade plywood. If you're putting in a thicker floor, 5/8 or 1/2 inch, 5/8, whatever, they have tongue and groove type subfloor systems that you can actually purchase pre-formed and pre-made, and all you have to do is just cut it to size for the room that you're working on. But for our case, we're only working on an 1/8 of an inch that we need, so I'm just going to throw down some basic contractor grade plywood over that. Number 4 is the type of screws that you're going to use. If you're going to go with the liquid nails adhesive route, just be mindful that once you put that stuff down, down, it's not going to want to come up again very easy. So I'm not personally using any sort of floor adhesive, but you may want to consider that if you want a more long-standing, permanent application that doesn't have the any of the rising and falling that might happen if you don't have it. But for screws, I'm using screws in our application, and you just want to make sure that those screws have a nice beefy thread on them so they can grab that wood underneath, and make sure that they're about an inch longer than whatever your subfloor is. So in our case, we're putting on an 1/8 inch subfloor, so you want at least an inch and an eighth screw. That gives you enough thread depth to go into the meat of the floor underneath and keep that floor from popping up. And number 5, you want to make sure that your existing floor that you have right now is absolutely clean before you put down that new subfloor. If you have anything left on that floor, leftover pieces of mortar, dust, bits of anything else, it can cause your floor to be wavy, can cause pockets of air, which over time can cause those dips and a feeling of softness on your floor. So make sure you use your vacuum, you use your shop vac, use a broom, whatever you need. Get that floor as clean as possible before you put down that new subfloor, so there's as much contact as possible with your old floor. Number 6, what you want is the spacing and the gaps between your subfloor pieces. If you're not using a room that's exactly 4x8, which not many people have, you're going to be placing pieces of plywood side by side. So when you have that instance where you're putting wood side by side, you need to make sure that your two pieces of plywood are not actually touching. You don't want them rubbing together, because when they rub together, number 1, it's wood. So if you're in an environment, which is basically all environments that are prone to environmental changes, such as higher and lower humidity, that wood is going to expand and contract. And expand and contract. When it expands, it's going to stretch out and push against the other piece of wood and then pop up. And if it contracts, then you have a big gap. But we're more concerned with the expansion part, where it may cause the point to pop up, and if the two pieces of wood rub together, then you have your squeaks and you have your creaks. And
I've lost the bleeps, I've lost the sweeps, and I've lost the creeps.
The what? The what? And the what?
The bleeps, the sweeps, and the creeps.
That's not all he's lost.
So be mindful of your spacing. I use a 1/8 inch spacing gap in between each of my pieces, so there's enough room for expansion. Now, number 7, you also want to be mindful of your screw placement. When you are considering where two pieces of your subfloor meet together, you want to keep about 2 to 3 inches of spacing between screws. That will minimize that expansion and contraction in those points. And also keep 3 or 4 inches or so around the edges of your room, so that it keeps the floor down. In between, in the middle of your sheet, what I did anyway is I spaced my screws right about every 8 inches or so, and that just made sure that any time that floor would expand and contract, it would be limited to a very small space. But for the most part, it's, as you can see from that previous video, it's stuck down pretty good with quite a few screws. I used about 1.25 pound screw, 1.25 pound of screws for a 5 foot by 5 foot room. Number 8, you also want to consider sealant. Okay, now some people will say, some professionals will say, do not seal your subfloor. Make sure there's plenty of gap and ability for it to expand and contract. But because I'm putting this in a bathroom, because it's going right up against that tub edge, I want to give it just a little bit of, extra protection. So if water splashes out of the tub, splashes out of the sink or what have you, there will be at least a little bit of protection so that the water will not go down beneath this new subfloor and cause any more damage. So in the areas that are prone to water, around the toilet, around the sink, around the bathtub, I use a clear silicone adhesive. It's soft and pliable, so it will expand and contract as the floor goes, and hopefully that will provide a little bit of extra protection. Again, it might be overkill because the vinyl plank flooring system is guaranteed to be waterproof, but I just want to have that extra peace of mind. So you may want to consider putting a little bit of sealant around areas that are prone to getting wet. Maybe you don't. Maybe other professionals are more knowledgeable than I am about that. So anyway, that's pretty much what I got done today. I'm sorry I taught your ear off again, but there's just so much information. I want to make sure that you guys have the best possible information if you're going to be trying to tackle a job like this. I've done it a couple times myself, so I'm just trying to share that experience with you so I know you will have a better chance of being successful in a job and making your house your own. I really appreciate you watching today. Please like and subscribe down below, if you like what you hear, like what you see, and check out some of these other videos that I have posted up here. And once again, thanks for watching, everybody. God bless you.